Hello, I'm making this video because even though War Thunder's one of my favorite games, I always seem to go back to it. I found there's a surprising lack of information about the game in general, or I personally at least find it much harder to find information about the game than other games, even kind of important things. One thing I was looking at is how the hell the spawn economy, like the point system, works, and maybe I'm just bad at searching, but I've found very little information. I'm sure there's probably some forums somewhere if I really deep dive, but I'm just surprised there's nothing on YouTube anywhere. So that's why I'm making this video, just to give some of that information because some of it's pretty important and it will help you a lot once you hear it. I think get more spawn points in, really get more bang for your buck because it's kind of counterintuitive and a bit weird, but I think I've kind of cracked the code. Now, there is a video that I will link in the description. There's one on some of the income, basically some of the ways to get points and how those work. But honestly, the only thing that I would argue is that important is the how many points you get for control points, and you get a 200 if you take it yourself. And it is true that the points are shared if other people cap, but it's kind of interesting. The more people that share the point, the more points overall are generated. So, for example, if let's say two people are capping the point, each person's going to get about 140 spawn points. So, even though they'll individually get less, overall more will be created, which is kind of an odd system. So I guess strategically that means it might be best to try to take points together as a team, but then that's less points for you. So anyway, that's just an odd insight I found personally that wasn't in the video I'm gonna add. But other than that, it's just kind of how a breakdown. I'll put it up right now. A breakdown of how much everything gives you points. I know about a kill's about 100 points, critical hits like 50. But honestly, I wouldn't worry about too much about these because really you should just be shooting whatever you can anyway. Like it's not really gonna, it's not really tactically important. It's not really gonna change your behavior other than the caps thing. I don't really see much value in really deep diving on this personally. But what I can't find any information about, and what I think is much more important for both decision making that you make in a battle as well as decisions prior to a battle for making your lineup, is the cost. The way the cost works is very interesting. So, I'll start with this. As you might know, um, if you're bringing in a lower tier vehicle, typically it'll be cheaper. For example, a medium tank. If you're higher tier, if it's the highest tier in your lineup, it's going to be about 150 spawn points. And if it's one whole tier lower, then you get a 50 point reduction, and it's only 100. I don't know why War Thunder does this. It breaks it into point 0.3 and point 0.7. I wish they're all just, because it doesn't break it down any difference. It's only point 0.3 and point 0.7. But anyway, if it is minus point 0.3 or I guess point 0.4, whatever, minus a third of a whatever spawn thing, then or tier, then it will be 130 and 120 respectively. You can see this chart here. I'll just have this up. But there's more important things than that. So AA is like 80. A fighter is around 480. Other aircraft 520. Helicopters 300, but they always have munitions. But the biggest thing, and I maybe should have said this first, is that there's 5 categories of equipment or vehicles, and these categories that they place these vehicles in, they're very important because every time you use a vehicle within a category, the cost is, how do I word this? Multiplied by that many times that you used it. I was trying to figure out the best way to word this, even though it's kind of a simple concept. It is kind of awkward to word. So basically, the way it works is the first time you spawn in, let's say with this AA category, first time you use an AA, it's going to be around 80 spawn points. The second time, it'll be 160. The third time, it'll be 240, so on. So it basically multiplies by how many times you used it. So it's not doubling each time. It doubles the first time, but it's multiplied by how many times you use it. So, but this brings some odd tactical decisions because it means you might want to bring more AAs than you're currently bringing, because the 5 categories, I maybe should have said this first, sorry, are AA, all other ground vehicles excluding AA, fighters, other aircraft excluding fighters and helicopters, and then lastly helicopters. These are the 5 categories of things. And it's important to know this because when you're building your lineup, you want a good mixture of each, because, well, each time you use something within a category, the next time you use something within that category, like I said, it's going to multiply by that. So you can get a lot more bang for your buck if you kind of mix them as much as possible. So when you first go in, you might want to go in with a tank, and then you might want to respawn as an AA. Or, interestingly enough, you might want to start out with an AA, because some of those AAs can move quite quick. And a lot of the time, in a lot of maps, a good strategy is just to use the first vehicle basically to cap the cap zone. And some of those AAs, especially low tier, have enough punch they can even kill some light tanks that you might engage with. But obviously it's all relative. Even though, yes, from a cost standpoint, that's the best strategy. Like, especially, I would argue if you have around seven garage slots, I would take personally 3 just general ground vehicles, 2 AA, 1 fighter, and 1 bomber or strike aircraft. Because bombers and strike aircraft are categorized the same, which is odd because that also means that, like I said, light tanks, medium tank, literally everything but AA is also using the same system. So that's pretty much the big thing. Experiment around, try using more AA. Obviously, cost isn't everything though. So even though it might be from an economic standpoint best to spawn an AA, you might want to spawn a tank sometimes, because just because the AA is cheaper, or you're having to pay double the cost for a tank if the AA has no use right now because there's no aircraft and it's not one that can really do anything to enemy vehicles, then it's just better off paying like normal than being useless. But still, this is very important, because once you know this, you can get a lot more power out of your spawn points. You will be able to, once you master this and adapt to this system, almost always I find myself to be the last person to leave a game, or I'm never running out of spawn points. I'm always there the whole game. And it's largely because I'm just aware of how the spawn system works. So hopefully, I'm not a professional YouTuber. I just only made this because I'm mad no one else did. And so I hope this helps you get more spawns in. And I'm glad you're playing, ground realistic, best mode. Good job there.